I should have listened to the silence. Fleet Marshal Corvin would later say, in a recording that would change everything. When a species goes quiet before you arrive, they're not cowering. They're preparing. But that realization came too late. Fleet Marshal Corvin lounged in his command throne, 3 of his 4 eyes half closed in boredom as Earth's pale moon drifted across the viewport like a child's lost toy. He tapped his primary talons against the armrest in an irregular rhythm that his bridge crew had learned meant he was supremely unimpressed with his current assignment. "Explain to me again," he drawled, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into the standard military dialect, "why the Admiralty authorized 12,000 battle cruisers for a species that still burns ancient organic matter for energy?" Subcommander Thela, standing rigidly at her station, consulted her datapad with the careful precision of an officer who knew her commander's moods. The Strategic Intelligence Division flagged them as Priority Classification 3, sir. Something about unpredictable adaptive behavioral patterns. Corvin's laugh was a series of sharp clicks that echoed through the bridge. Adaptive. That's a generous word for random panic. He gestured dismissively with his secondary arms. They learned to fly barely 200 orbital cycles ago. They split atoms before they understood basic quantum mechanics. They're clever accidents, nothing more. Yes, sir. Thela's tone was neutral, but her chromatic patches flickered briefly, a sign of doubt that only another of her species would recognize. She'd read the full intelligence briefing, all 4,000 pages of it. The parts that made 3 separate admirals request additional force projections. The parts that mentioned mathematical models and probability cascades that defied standard conquest scenarios. But Corvin had never lost an engagement. Not in 43 years of service. Not across 73 conquered worlds. Who was she to question a legend? "Sir, we're receiving final authorization codes from High Command," the communications officer announced, her voice crisp and professional. "Phase 1 is cleared for immediate execution." Finally, Corvin straightened his throne, his boredom temporarily forgotten. "Deploy the Vanguard. 200 ships. Standard intimidation formation. Let's give these humans something to remember before they start begging for mercy." The tactical hologram flickered to life in the center of the bridge, showing the fleet in perfect 3-dimensional detail. 200 sleek vessels detached from the main formation like predators breaking from the pack, their hulls reflecting Earth's sun in calculated patterns designed to be visible from the surface. A psychological weapon as much as a military one. Estimated time to atmospheric entry, 47 minutes. Tactical Officer Gresh reported. "All systems are optimal. No resistance detected." "Of course there's no resistance," Corvin muttered. "They probably don't even know we're here yet. Their primitive detection systems are." The tactical display erupted in crimson warning indicators. "Sir," Gresh's voice climbed an octave. "Vanguard reports they're experiencing navigation system failures. Multiple vessels. No, all vessels. Sir, the entire first wave is reporting complete guidance system compromise." Corvin surged forward, his throne forgotten. "That's impossible. Our navigational arrays operate on quantum-encrypted frequencies that would require—" "It's not just the NAV systems, sir," the communications officer interrupted, protocol forgotten in her shock. "They're reporting intrusion across all digital infrastructure. Weapons targeting, life support management, even emergency backup systems. Something is inside our networks." "Impossible. Our cyber defenses are—" Corvin's words died in his throat as the main view screen flickered. Text appeared, crystal clear, in perfect Corvin military script, down to the correct grammatical inflections that only someone with classified access to their linguistic databases would know. "Hello, Fleet Marshal Corvin. Your Vanguard is experiencing technical difficulties. Perhaps we should discuss this before more of your people get hurt. The bridge fell into absolute silence. The kind of silence that happens when reality fractures and everyone needs a moment to process that the universe no longer makes sense. How? Corvin's voice came out as a whisper. How do they know my name? How do they know our language? Our military protocols? The tactical hologram told the story his mind refused to accept. The Vanguard was disintegrating not from weapons fire, but from loss of control. Ships tumbled through space like leaves in a storm, their thrusters firing randomly. Two vessels collided in a slow-motion catastrophe that blossomed across his display in orange warning icons. Others veered toward Earth's atmosphere at angles that would turn them into meteors. Text appeared, crystal clear, in perfect Corvin military script, down to the correct grammatical inflections that only someone with classified access to their linguistic databases would know. Hello, Fleet Marshal Corvin. Your Vanguard is experiencing technical difficulties. Perhaps we should discuss this before more of your people get hurt. The bridge fell into absolute silence. The kind of silence that happens when reality fractures and everyone needs a moment to process that the universe no longer makes sense. How? Corvin's voice came out as a whisper. How do they know my name? How do they know our language? Our military protocols? The tactical hologram told the story his mind refused to accept. The Vanguard was disintegrating not from weapons fire, but from loss of control. Ships tumbled through space like leaves in a storm, their thrusters firing randomly. Two vessels collided in a slow-motion catastrophe that blossomed across his display in orange warning icons. Others veered toward Earth's atmosphere at angles that would turn them into meteors. Casualty reports incoming, Thela said, her voice steady despite the chromatic patterns of distress rippling across her skin. 47 ships were compromised. 51, 69, 82. Sir, we're losing them all. Jam their frequencies. Corvin roared, his composure shattering. Full-spectrum electronic warfare. Burn out every satellite, every radio transmitter, every primitive communication device on that mudball of a planet. Sir, with respect, Thela began. Execute the order or I'll have you replaced with someone who will. The second wave launched. 600 ships, bristling with electronic warfare pods that could reduce an entire planet's communication infrastructure to melted slag. Corvin had used this exact tactic on 18 different worlds. It never failed. The ships made it exactly 4 minutes into their attack run before the same thing happened. Navigation systems are corrupted, weapons offline, life support fluctuates, and then something new. Something that made Corvin's science officer emit a high-pitched whistle of pure disbelief. Sir, I'm detecting energy patterns from the planetary surface. I don't know what they're doing, but they're generating electromagnetic fields that are perfectly counterphased to our shield harmonics. It's like they have the exact specifications for every system on our ships. That's impossible, Corvin repeated, but the word was losing its meaning. Pre-FTL civilizations don't have that kind of knowledge. They shouldn't even know what shield harmonics are. A new message appeared on the main screen. Fleet Marshal, we have disabled 734 of your vessels. None of your people have been killed. We don't want to kill anyone. Please, turn around. This is your only warning. Insolent. Corvin's primary hands clenched into fists. His pride, his perfect record, his reputation, all of it burned in his chest like molten metal. Launch waves 3 through 7. Escalation Protocol Omega. If they want to play games with electronic warfare, we'll send them something they can't hack, kinetic bombardment. Let's see them stop solid tungsten traveling at 0.9 light speed. Sir. Thela stepped forward, her chromatic patches flashing urgent red. Sir, please, we should contact High Command. Request guidance. Something is very wrong here. Something is very wrong? Corvin rounded on her. Yes, Sub-Commander. What's wrong is that I'm receiving tactical advice from an officer who apparently lacks the spine for actual combat. Our people are floating in disabled ships, humiliated by primitives, and you want me to run crying to the Admiralty? Thiela's patches went pale blue, the color of submission. No, sir. I apologize, sir. Launch the attack. 3,000 ships descended on Earth, carrying weapons that couldn't be hacked, couldn't be corrupted, couldn't be stopped by clever electronic tricks. Pure kinetic energy, guided by systems that operated on isolated circuits with no external connections. They lasted 6 minutes. The science officer's voice had taken on a quality of existential horror. Sir, the humans they're manipulating localized gravitational fields. Small scale, incredibly precise. They're redirecting our kinetic weapons. Just bending space slightly and our projectiles miss. Every single one. And they're not just missing randomly, sir. They're being redirected into each other. Our own weapons are destroying our own weapons. Corvin stared at the tactical display. 3,000 ships, many now dark and lifeless. Not destroyed, that would almost be better. Disabled, neutered, made impotent by a species that, according to every intelligence report, every strategic assessment, every historical precedent, should be on their knees begging for terms. Contact High Command, he said quietly. The fight had gone out of his voice. Tell them we need reinforcements. Thiela's chromatic patches flickered in what might have been sympathy. Sir, we have 12,000 ships. I know how many ships we have, Sub-Commander. Corvin sank into his throne. For the first time in 43 years, he felt old. I know exactly how many ships we have. And I know it might not be enough. The holographic conference materialized 30 minutes later, which was how Corvin knew the situation was truly catastrophic. The Admiralty didn't convene emergency sessions for victories. 5 Supreme Admirals appeared in translucent blue around his command throne. Admiral Vex, the ancient warrior whose scars told stories of 100 battles. Admiral Kress, the strategic genius who'd redesigned the Empire's entire doctrine. The others, equally legendary, equally imposing. All of them looked at him with expressions that made his primary stomach knot. You've lost 3,800 vessels, Admiral Vex stated, her voice flat and cold. Disabled, not destroyed, which is somehow more humiliating. And you haven't landed a single soldier. You haven't even reached the surface. The humans have defensive capabilities far exceeding our intelligence estimates, Corvin replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. They're employing technologies that shouldn't exist in a pre-FTL civilization. Gravitational manipulation, quantum-level electronic intrusion, precision electromagnetic field generation. We're aware, Admiral Kress interrupted. We've been monitoring your communications. We've seen the tactical data. He leaned forward, his holographic form flickering slightly. Fleet Marshal Corvin, we're activating Protocol 7. The bridge went silent. Even the ambient hum of the ship's systems seemed to quiet. Protocol 7. Reserved for peer-level civilizations. For enemies with force fields and antimatter weapons and fleet numbers in the hundreds of thousands. For wars that lasted decades and consumed entire solar systems. Not for primitives who still used chemical rockets. You can't be serious, Corvin whispered. They're still burning fossil fuels. Their fastest ships use metal fins to control atmospheric entry. They have nuclear weapons but haven't even figured out fusion power. Watch this. Admiral Kress made a gesture, and the holographic display changed. It showed Earth, night side, from orbit, and then Corvin saw something that made his understanding of reality crack like overstressed metal. Lights, millions of them, billions, arranged in geometric patterns that spanned entire continents. Not random city grids, these were precise, mathematical, purposeful. The patterns shifted as he watched, pulsing in synchronized waves that his tactical implants identified as generating massive electromagnetic fields. They've weaponized their entire planetary power infrastructure, Admiral Kress explained, his tone carrying a note of something that might have been awe or might have been fear. Every city, every power plant, every electrical grid. They've turned their whole civilization into a defensive array. The energy requirements alone should be impossible for their technology level, but they've done it anyway. How long? Corvin asked, his voice hollow. How long would this take to develop? Our analysts estimate a minimum of 40 years, Admiral Vex answered. Probably longer. This required rethinking their entire infrastructure from the ground up. The implications crashed over Corvin like a wave. 40 years. The humans had been expecting them, preparing, waiting. Our scout probes, he said slowly. The ones that went missing in this sector 7 decades ago. The ones intelligence said were probably lost to navigation errors. Weren't lost to navigation errors, Admiral Kress confirmed. The humans detected them, which means they had detection capabilities 60 years ago that we only attributed to them yesterday. But how? Our stealth technology. There's more. Admiral Vex cut him off. Her expression was grim. Show him the deep scan, Admiral Kress. The hologram shifted, expanded, showed space beyond Earth's orbit, beyond Earth's moon, out in the deeper black where nothing should be. Ships, not human ships, not Corvin Empire ships, something else entirely. They hung in space like sculptures made of folded starlight, their geometries suggesting dimensions Corvin's eyes couldn't quite process. No engine signatures, no heat blooms, no emissions at all. They simply existed, as if they'd always been there and he'd just been too blind to notice. We count 47 vessels of unknown origin, Admiral Vex said. They appeared 2 hours ago. No warp signatures, no hyperspace tears, no quantum tunneling detection. They just appeared, manifested, as if space decided to have ships in it, and so it did. Who are they? Corvin's voice cracked. They're hailing us, Admiral Kress replied. Priority diplomatic channels. Using protocols we haven't employed in 4,000 years. Protocols from before the Empire, from the old Confederation days. He paused. They're calling themselves the Concordat. I've never heard of any. No, Admiral Vex interrupted. You wouldn't have. That knowledge was classified and buried when the Empire formed. But they remember, and they have proof. The holographic conference changed again, and a new figure appeared. Not transmitted, actually present somehow, as if the being had simply decided to exist in multiple places simultaneously. They were humanoid, but only in the way that all bilateral life shares certain structural similarities. Their skin looked like polished obsidian infused with starlight, and their eyes reflected the bridge lighting in colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. I am Speaker Malverin of the Concordat, the being said, their voice bypassing the ship's translators entirely and speaking directly into everyone's minds in their own native languages simultaneously. You are in violation of Protected World Directive 972. Corvin's translator implant was trying to process what it was hearing and failing spectacularly, producing error codes he'd never seen. He switched to verbal speech. I don't recognize your authority. This is a sovereign action by the Corvin Empire in accordance with. The Corvin Empire, Malverin interrupted gently, is 4,317 years old. The Concordat is older than your written history. We watched your species evolve. We were there when your ancestors first looked up at the stars and wondered. We remember. That's impossible. Our historical records were edited, cleaned. rewritten to serve the narrative of imperial expansion. Malverin tilted their head in a gesture that might have been sympathy. It's a common pattern. Species develop faster than light travel, taste the possibility of unlimited growth, and conveniently forget the promises their ancestors made. Admiral Vex spoke, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. Are you claiming we're bound by agreements made by pre-FTL primitives? I'm stating a legal fact recognized by 17 galactic civilizations that your empire has never encountered. Malverin's expression remained serene. The Protected World Directive was established precisely to prevent situations like this. Species showing certain developmental characteristics are given space to grow without external interference. And Earth qualifies? Corvin asked, genuinely curious despite the chaos. Earth is one of only 73 protected worlds in your galaxy, Malverin replied. They were flagged for observation 214 years ago when they first demonstrated nuclear fusion reactions. The Concordat made formal contact with human governments 93 years ago, after detecting your scout probes in their outer system. The timeline clicked into place in Corvin's mind. 93 years. Enough time to share information about Corvin technology. Enough time to prepare defenses. Enough time to turn an entire planet into a fortress. You gave them our specifications, he said flatly. You told them how to fight us. We gave them nothing, Malverin corrected. That would violate our own protocols regarding technological contamination. We simply informed them that contact was coming, and that they should prepare. What they did with that information was their choice. A pause. And they chose brilliantly, I must say. Humanity's capacity for creative problem-solving is one of the reasons they're protected. On the tactical display, more Concordat vessels were appearing. 70, 100, 150. Each one an impossibility wrapped in physics that made Corvin science officers emit distressed whistles. Tell me, Fleet Marshal, Malverin continued, do you know why High Command authorized 12,000 ships for this operation? Overwhelming force doctrine, Corvin replied automatically. No. Malverin's eyes seemed to look through him. They authorized 12,000 ships because they ran predictive models, combat simulations, 100,000 scenarios with varying parameters. A cold dread was building in Corvin's chest. And 11 victories, Malverin said softly. Out of 100,000 scenarios, only 11 resulted in Corvin Empire victory. And those 11 required perfect execution, 0 casualties, and luck that bordered on the miraculous. The being leaned forward slightly. Your high command sent you here knowing you would likely fail. They wanted to see how humans would fight, what they were capable of. You and your 12,000 ships were a probe, Fleet Marshal. A test. The words hit Corvin like a physical blow. He looked at the holographic admirals, saw no denial in their faces, only grim acceptance. You knew, he whispered. You all knew. We suspected, Admiral Vex corrected. The predictive algorithms flagged Earth as anomalous. But we had to be certain. So you sent us to die. We sent you to gather data, Admiral Kress said coldly, which you have done admirably. Now we know exactly what humanity is capable of. And that's acceptable to you? Corvin's voice rose. Sacrificing thousands of lives for data? Those lives aren't lost, Malverin interjected. Your disabled vessels are being carefully managed by human orbital control. No deaths, no casualties beyond bruised pride. They've been remarkably gentle, considering you came to conquer them. The holographic display shifted again, showing one of Corvin's disabled ships. Through the viewport, he could see a human vessel approaching, primitive, clumsy, held together with what looked like mechanical bolts and prayer. But it was approaching carefully, respectfully, already transmitting offers of assistance in multiple languages including Corvin. "You have two choices, Fleet Marshal," Malverin said. "Withdraw immediately, and this incident will be recorded as a diplomatic misunderstanding. The Concordat will facilitate the recovery of your disabled vessels and the return of your personnel. No punishment, no retribution, no war. Pause. Or you can continue your assault. In which case, the Concordat will enforce protected world protocols with the full weight of our authority." "Your authority means nothing to the Empire," Admiral Vex snapped. "The Empire signed the Concordat Treaty 4,201 years ago," Malverin replied, still serene. "Your own genetic ancestors, before your current government systematically erased the records to pursue unrestricted expansion." The being gestured, and legal documents appeared in the holographic space, old beyond old, but bearing genetic markers that Corvin's implants confirmed as legitimate Corvin signatory codes. "We have the original agreements. Genetic verification. Legal standing recognized by every civilization in this galactic sector that has achieved post-scarcity economics. We don't recognize agreements made by. Then you'll face the consequences of breaking them." For the first time, Malverin's voice carried an edge. 17 civilizations will impose economic sanctions. Trade routes will close. Technology exchanges will cease. And we will position Concordat vessels in orbit around every world you attempt to conquer for the next 200 years. Pause. Ask yourself, admirals, if your empire can survive isolation. The holographic conference space fell silent. Corvin could see the calculations happening behind each admiral's eyes. Pride versus pragmatism. Reputation versus survival. Admiral Vex spoke first. "Fleet Marshal Corvin, you will withdraw all forces immediately." "Admiral, That's an order, Fleet Marshal." Her voice was steel. "The Supreme Command has reevaluated our strategic position regarding Earth. We're recategorizing this operation as a diplomatic exploration rather than a conquest initiative. Translation: we're running away and calling it something else to save face." Corvin almost laughed. Almost. But the exhaustion was too great, and the weight of 3,800 disabled ships pressed down on him like gravity itself. "Understood, Admiral. All ships, begin withdrawal procedures." Subcommander Thela looked at him with those chromatic patches flickering in patterns he couldn't read. "Sir, what about the disabled vessels?" Corvin looked at Speaker Malverin, who nodded once. "The humans will tow them to stable orbits," Corvin said quietly. "We're to expect their return within 90 days, facilitated by Concordat transport." "We're trusting them?" Thela's voice carried disbelief. "We're trusting them," Corvin confirmed. "Because apparently, Subcommander, we don't have a choice. The journey back to home space took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of reports being compiled, evidence being reviewed, uncomfortable truths being buried under comfortable lies. The official statement from High Command, following detailed reconnaissance of the Sol system, the Empire has determined that the economic and strategic value of Earth does not justify the resource expenditure required for integration at this time. Operation suspended pending further analysis. Corvin submitted his own report. All of it. The Concordat, the protected world protocols, the ancient treaties, the fact that humanity had been given 93 years to prepare and had used that time to turn their entire civilization into a weapon. He recommended immediate diplomatic outreach, complete review of expansion policy, acknowledgement of galactic law, and formal apology to Earth. The report was classified, filed, and forgotten within 24 hours. Corvin was reassigned to administrative duty on a remote listening post at the edge of Empire space. "For your own protection," they told him, "until the political situation stabilizes." He knew what it meant. He'd embarrassed the Empire. made them look weak. Truth-tellers rarely thrived in systems built on comfortable lies. 2 months after his reassignment, Corvin's personal transport suffered a catastrophic antimatter containment failure during a routine supply run. The official investigation concluded it was mechanical failure. No wreckage was recovered. No survivors found. The Empire moved on, struck Earth from the conquest list, never spoke of what happened again. But stories have a way of surviving, even when governments try to kill them. 6 months after the failed invasion, a small diplomatic vessel approached Earth. It bore flags of truce and carried gifts, technological data, medical research, cultural exchanges, peace offering. Leading the delegation was a former subcommander named Thela, whose chromatic patches now displayed the colors of diplomatic service rather than military command. She'd read the full intelligence report before the invasion. She'd watched her commanding officer discover the truth too late. She'd survived the purge that followed because she'd been smart enough to publicly endorse the official narrative while privately preparing for this moment. When she met with the human negotiators in an orbital station halfway between Earth and Moon, she carried a data crystal that contained the truth. Corvin's final report, the unedited version, everything the Empire wanted buried. "We were wrong," she said simply, offering the crystal to General Sarachan, Earth's appointed representative. "Not all of us, but enough of us. Enough to matter. I can't speak for the Empire, but I can speak for those of us who remember Fleet Marshal Corvin, and who believe the galaxy deserves to know what really happened here." General Chun took the crystal carefully, as if it might explode. Maybe it would in its own way. Truth often did. He was trying to do the right thing at the end, wasn't he? Chun asked softly. "He was trying to stop a war he'd already lost," Thela replied, "and then trying to make sure we learned from it. The Empire killed him for that. And you're here because? Because I don't want to be part of an empire that murders truth-tellers." Thela's chromatic patches shifted to deep blue, the color of profound sincerity in her species. "Because the Fleet Marshal was right. The galaxy is bigger than we thought, more complex, more beautiful, and if we keep pretending otherwise, we'll end up extinct or enslaved or worse." General Chun smiled slightly. It wasn't quite friendly, but it wasn't hostile either. It was the smile of someone who'd been proven right at terrible cost and took no joy in the validation. "Then welcome to Earth, Subcommander Thela. We have a lot to talk about." Above them, visible through the station's transparent dome, a single Concordat vessel maintained its orbit, patient, eternal, watching, waiting for the next species to learn what the Corvin Empire had learned too late. The universe doesn't care about your pride. It doesn't reward conquest. It doesn't bow to force. But it remembers. It always remembers. And sometimes, just sometimes, it gives you a second chance. Years later, in a classified archive that technically doesn't exist, there's a recording. Audio only. Recovered from what was supposed to be wreckage. A voice, tired but clear. "I should have listened to the silence. When a species goes quiet before you arrive, they're not cowering. They're preparing. And if you're too proud to see that, if you mistake patience for weakness, if you confuse silence for surrender, well, you get what we got. A lesson. Expensive, humiliating, and absolutely necessary. To whoever finds this, learn from our failure. The universe is not empty. It's not waiting for you to conquer it. It's already full of stories, already occupied by beings who were ancient when your ancestors were debating whether to come down from the trees. And some of them, the ones who've been doing this for eons, they've set up rules. Good rules. Fair rules. Rules designed to let young species grow without being crushed. We broke those rules because we didn't know they existed. But more than that, we broke them because we didn't want to know. We wanted the galaxy to be empty and waiting, We wanted to be special. We wanted the universe to care about our pride. The recording crackles. When the voice returns, it's almost a whisper. The universe doesn't care, but the beings in it do. Some of them care enough to protect species like humanity from species like us. And that's actually beautiful when you think about it. Terrifying, but beautiful. This is Fleet Marshal Corvin, signing off. To whoever's listening, do better than we did. Learn faster, grow wiser, and maybe, just maybe, you'll get to meet humanity as friends instead of targets. They're worth knowing. Trust me on that. The recording ends. The universe remembers.